Well, first, I just got back from an 8-month bicycle trip around North America, pulling a big 70-pound trailer, speaking at schools, and I just actually spoke to 500 children a few days ago here in Vancouver. And listening to you, Natasha, I've heard a lot of speakers over the years since I started to really become more conscious. That was so clear and beautiful, like what you were sharing today. That really, really touched me, because I think back when I was about 23 actually, and I went through so much with my beautiful parents who were passed on recently, both at 92. And I think my rite of passage was really doing a bicycle trip in 1970. I was actually the first person to ride a bicycle around North America. And they never really knew me, you know, and it was just so sad. And we were always that fighting and what you were talking about. And it was just so interesting, because then I did that bike trip, and that was my rite of passage in a way. I'd done the drugs and drinking, which now I'm away from. But I did that bicycle trip, and it was a journey back to myself, really. And a lot of people go to Europe when they finish school, and they find who they are a lot of times, and we don't as young people. So what you were saying, I've suggested to so many principals at schools that in grade 8, it was interesting what you said, that every child should take a year off from school and go away to an outward bound kind of thing, or like this teen retreat. When I heard about what Andrew and Ella had created, I was the one that kind of came to them just a short while ago, because it's really what I just believe in so much, you know. And I think about, my wife and I are going through a thing with our apartment right now. We've got a leaky condo, and I never talk about money. People always say, how do you make it in life? They wonder if I have a job or anything, you know. But our leaky condo is costing us $108,000 for our suite alone, and we just kind of looked at each other, because we're both not caught up in money, and we just make it, you know. But if I had a teenager, like, I would pay $108,000 to not go through what I went through with my parents and everything. Like, it's just so fantastic what you're creating. What you're starting here, Andrew and Ella, with this teen, and everybody, because well, meeting you guys, and you know, that's where it all started for me just a few weeks ago, finding out about it. But what you're all creating is unbelievable, and you're all at the start of that, because it's going to really grow now. Like, schools, principals have said to me, it's got to change, but they really don't know how to do it, how to change the system, because, you know, it means changing everything, changing the teachers, the way they look at things. And I go in and I speak to all these kids, and I spoke at Carson Graham. The principal came up after. This was before I went on this last bike trip, because I spoke at all the high schools and elementary schools, mostly in West Van. And they were all following the bike trip because of the blogging and everything. And I'm 62 years young. I'm not a young guy. I did this just because I believe in it so much with what's happening with our young people, because the crystal meth and the different things that you're talking about is rampant. And it's just like what you were saying. It's the reason why it is. And so I spoke at those schools, and the principal at Carson Graham said, wow, you know, you will not ever realize how much you just affected me as a principal and as a parent with what I was saying. And he was in tears to see this wonderful principal. And it's all about feelings and getting back to our feelings. And my parents and I were reacting to each other, just like what you're saying. And I wish I knew what I knew now. Your kids, if you do sign up for this, because I wasn't asked to come here and try to talk into doing it, but if you sign up for this, the treat you're going to get when your kids come back from something like this is well worth any money in the world. I'll tell you, the peace that you'll have, and what you're going to save on psychiatrist bills and for yourself and everything. I was just jotting down a few little things, and you know, I write little books of thoughts called Reflections, and the first thought I ever wrote at the end of my first bike trip, you kind of touched on, and it was, I'd rather be seen for who I am and be alone than be accepted for someone I'm not and be lonely. Because I was so lonely before, and nobody knew who I was. Our family, we didn't hug, we didn't talk, we didn't look each other in the eye and say, I love you, and we never talked about feelings. And now there's all sorts of programs where people talk about feelings. I'm not in AA really, but when I was on this bike trip, I'd go into meetings just to listen to people talk about their feelings, but we wait till people are really sick before we get help that way, you know. And this is so neat with teenagers. Like, I just believe it's so much, like with little children, that we can sit in a circle in school and talk about feelings without anybody marking us or judging us or analyzing us. We can just share, because that's where all our anger comes from. And anger is really healthy. It's just the way we channel it that's really, really scary, you know. And so what you guys, all of you, are doing is just so unbelievable. Another little thought that, you know, that I wrote in one of my books is there are a lot of homeless people living in big houses. You know, it's a house, but it's not a home full of love. So we need to learn to share feelings, talk about feelings. And when kids go away to these retreats, they come back different people. You know, and not different, they come back who they are. Because we're wearing masks. I talk to these young people, they'll write in their journals. But what do we do with our journals? They're under lock and key. Isn't that amazing when you think about it? That this is really who I am over here? Instead of let's just open our journals and say who we are. Are we depressed? Are we angry? Or are we excited? Or whatever it is. It's beautiful because it's who we are. Now to me there's nothing negative. I used to be depressed for months and months on end. And when I did that bike trip in 1970, it was because I was very suicidal. And I was playing football for UBC, I was in a fraternity, drinking a lot. Everybody thought I was the happiest guy. And I thought the goal in life is to go through life and go, phew, I made it without anybody knowing who I really am. You know? It's so sad. And our journals are really who we are. So depression is positive because it's a signal to us that something's going on in our life we're not happy with. My anger is positive because it's my channel to my deeper spiritual self. You know, we're all angry because we've lost touch with that beautiful child that when we came to this planet that was so excited about living. And so what we do is start wearing masks, but we're angry because we don't want to wear masks. But we wear masks to protect us because when we say who we are, often we get into these reactive kinds of things. So I won't say any more. It's just I'm just so excited about tonight because really I rode for 8 months this last time, and when I left, Sam Sullivan was there, Peter Ladner was there at the send-off. Peter Ladner so tragically lost his sister in the park. My whole thing about this trip was to stop the bullying and violence and abuse of kids, and it was focusing on the solution, which is kindness. All the kids got these bracelets, which is kindness in 9 different languages. They put them on their left wrist, and when they do an act of kindness, they move it to their right wrist. So they're conscious of being kind every day. So it's always focusing on the solution and everything. And so at the send-off, when those people were there, and somebody said, God, aren't you afraid this time? You're 62. This is your 3rd trip around North America. And I said, it's not something I want to do. I'm totally afraid. I had a panic attack for the first time in my life a week before I did it. I sat up in bed just sweating, thinking, like, I'm not going to be able to do this. You know, but then I said, but I'm much more afraid to not do what I was called to do. I was much more afraid not to live while I'm living here. And that's hopefully to share with people, we need to get back in touch with our beautiful heart. And that's what this is about, what you guys are doing. I'll finish off by saying I wasn't going to be here tonight. I've been in emergency the last 3 nights. I got a really bad bite and it's gone up my arm. But I drove out here, not on a bike. I don't want to see another bike for a while. But I drove out here because I got to go back into emergency tonight because they said once it gets up here, it really starts to get serious. But it's just too important to me now. I'm just seeing so much, and you guys are at the start of it. This retreat's going to grow every year, and I really admire your courage for starting it because it's always so risky in a way to start something. But it's like, you got to do it. Huh? That's why we're here. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.